The following is a paid program by the Whitley Law Firm. Welcome to Attorneys on Call, the program that gives you free legal information from the Whitley Law Firm. Now, here's your host, Drew Smith.
Welcome. We are so glad you're here for this edition of Attorneys on Call. I have a question. Have you ever thought about, do you have enough insurance? You ever thought about what would happen if somebody just rear-ended you or ran through a stoplight or a stop sign and crashed into your car? Do you have enough insurance to cover medical bills? And what about the other driver? What if that driver doesn't have insurance? We're going to be talking about those issues today in this edition of Attorneys on Call, along with a lot of other topics, especially Bob Whitley has something that he really wants to tell us about that's very exciting. Bob and Ben Whitley from the Whitley Law Firm. Guys, it's so great to be with you as always.
It's good to be here.
Nice to be here, Drew.
Bob, you have embarked on something new that I know you want to talk to our folks about today.
Well, it was a real struggle over a long period of time, but I've written a book. I have for a long time wanted to write a book. You know, Drew, we go through life. I've gone through my profession. I've been in various courtrooms all over the state. I've had all these clients and families, and sometimes you don't reflect on what's going on at the time. So the book has enabled me to go back and remember the cases that are the most important to me, the most maybe challenging to me, and they'll always be remembered. And the truth of the matter is, despite the number of case stories that are in the book, there are a lot more I didn't put in the book. And I also tried to intertwine with the stories a lot of information, things that I've learned, and you know, even lessons for lawyers. You know, I want to tell every lawyer, when a client makes a decision to hire you, take that decision seriously. There are hundreds of lawyers they see on TV, but they chose you. And I think if we keep that in mind and work with that in mind and always work towards that client never regretting that decision, you're going to do two things. You're going to work like heck on the law and interviewing witnesses and everything, but you're also going to care about that client. You know, I like for my clients to recognize that I suffer with them, you know, when things don't go well, but I also celebrate with them when they do. So I think, you know, lessons from a life in the law, that's some of the lessons that I've learned, and I've shared some of these, the cases and trials that I remember and other helpful information.
The book is called Attorney on Call, Lessons from a Life in the Law, written by Bob Whitley. You can get your free copy by calling the 800 number on your screen or simply going to the website, whitleylawfirm.com. Bob will autograph a copy for you and send it to you. Once again, it is free. So Ben, we're talking about insurance, and in Bob's book, there is a lot of great information here about what people need to know when it comes to insurance, especially automobile insurance. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about in the bulk of today's program.
Right, and just to make a comment about the book, you know, I've been able to hear these stories growing up, and they've always been important to me and my, you know, thinking about my professional career. So I'm just so glad that he has been able to put them down in a book so we can share them with everybody else. And I'm sure everyone will enjoy them as much as I do. I think the great thing about the book is that it tells the stories from his experience, but it also gives some really good practical advice and some things that you need to know if you've had an accident, if you've had a workers' comp claim, and all these insurance things that we're going to talk about here shortly about how much coverage you need to have and do you have enough, that's in the book too. So if you missed part of the show or you've got a family member that you think would find it interesting or helpful, you know, call and order the free book and we'll send it to you.
You are a family law firm. Bob talks in his book a lot about the influence that his dad had on him. And talk a little bit about Bob's influence on you when you were starting out as a young attorney.
Well, I mean, this is all I've known, you know, so Dad has been able to be my mentor, and I've been lucky enough for him to teach me through these experience that he has. And I think that's so important, is real experience. You know, so much of what happens today doesn't happen in the courtrooms like it did then. But he's able to bring that experience so that I can prepare cases and work with my clients in the way that he's taught me. And you know, that's invaluable to me, is to have a mentor that's also your dad, and that we've been able to work in this business together and work with some very smart lawyers that we've met before on this show. And we've got this great team to be able to bring some good service to people in North Carolina and effective legal representation.
And one of your attorneys, Whitney Powers, will be joining us a little bit later on in the program. Bob, you do in your book, you do give great information to people about insurance, and you have, in a 40-plus year career, dealt with insurance companies ad infinitum. What are the real important topics that people need to know when it comes to automobile insurance?
Well, I would say if I could pick one little topic, it would be just be familiar with your own policy, your own coverage, how much coverage you have and what type of coverage. It just happens every day when we talk to people either on the phone or in our office about their wreck, and we ask them about their own insurance. So they know who their agent is, and maybe they know they've got, quote, full coverage, but sometimes full coverage is not what I would call substantial coverage. Sometimes they have full minimum coverage. And one of the things I suggest in the book is the person maybe to meet with to learn the most about your insurance policy is your agent. Just meet with them. That's part of what they get paid to do, and find out what your coverages are. I always encourage people to get as much coverage as they can reasonably afford. And I think Ben and Whitney are going to talk a lot about it in the next two segments.
Ben, what did you learn when Bob was writing this book? What were the things that really stood out to you that really kind of hit home?
Well, one of the chapters in there that I think was my favorite is the trial from heaven. And this is in a story about a family that he helped with a successful verdict when he was younger than I was, back home in Kinston. And those stories from that trial I've heard all my life. In fact, I can remember being a young kid in the office in Kinston and seeing a steering column that was saved. And it was part of this evidence and a real critical piece of the evidence. You call and you get the free book, you can learn this story too and what I'm talking about. But I remember that being in the office. So these stories I've grown up with, so that was just cool to see that in print. But there's just some practical lessons in there. And the best part about it, it's free, and it's got some great advice.
This is the book right here, Attorney on Call, Lessons from a Life in the Law, written by Bob Whitley, 40-plus years practicing law here in North Carolina. Free book. He'll autograph it for you, the 800 number, or go to whitleylawfirm.com. Bob, this was a labor of love for you, wasn't it?
It was. And, you know, I've just met some incredible people over the years, and they've taught me a lot. Ben was speaking about the trial from heaven, the Smith family and Alicia Smith and her unfortunate death. You know, one of the things I learned and walked away from that at a very early age is death claims to families are not really at all about money. It's about a sense of responsibility. She wanted her daughter vindicated because her daughter was blamed for the wreck. And she wanted the person who was responsible to be held accountable. And even when we had settlement discussions while the jury was out, I remember Shirley looked at me and said, "Bob, we've gone too far. We've gone too far. They made us go to trial. We'll wait and see what the jury says."
Pick up the book to read the rest of the story, Attorney on Call, Lessons from a Life in the Law. We're going to be back with more of this edition of Attorneys on Call in just a moment.